how the sun works inside SketchUp and how to create. In this video, I'll show you how the sun works inside SketchUp and how to create cameras in your scene. Before I start with the explanation about the sunlight, it's important to mention that SketchUp, because of its open programming, has several third-party plugins that help us to do some operations that the software can't do by itself in a native way, or improve some others. So that in certain situations, we will use extensions. Go to Window Extension Warehouse. Don't worry, these extensions are allowed by Trimble. Given the explanation, let's use the plugin Solar North. In a few moments you'll notice why. I had it previously installed. First, apply the generic vray material to the entire scene to get feedback from the interactive renderer. The values for medium grey in SketchUp are equivalent to 186 for red, green and blue. Natively, SketchUp already has a sun. When you open a new file, you'll notice that in Asset Editor, a sunlight is included. Its properties can be modified to our liking. The sunlight isn't a physical element that you can see as in 3ds Max, and you can't move it manually in SketchUp. To do this, it's necessary to look for alternatives. To understand where the light is coming from in our scene, we should go to Window, Default Tray, Shadows. When you enable it in the panel, you'll be able to see the sun's direction through the projected shadows on the scene. The shadows are connected with vray automatically. You can see this when the interactive renderer is enabled. There are two ways to manage the angle of the sun. In Shadows, it's possible to set the time zone from the UTC. By changing it, you'll get different angles of the sun. If you vary the hours and date, it will change as well. Maybe the most useful way is through the Solar North plugin. With this tool, you'll be able to take advantage from the native shadow system merged with the plugin. All you need is to position the angle of the sun in the scene. You'll see the direction of the arrow is the same as our shadows. To sum up, what this plugin does is basically to assign the north of your scene horizontally. According to this, we can play with the elevation of the sun to simulate dawn, noon, or sunset illumination. We can decide which scenario gives us a better result between light and shadows. The camera is another element that isn't physical in SketchUp. I mean, we can't see a camera object as we can in 3ds Max and move it naturally. It's more intuitive. Whatever we see through the viewport while we navigate the model will be the frame. To create a camera in SketchUp, go to View, Animation, Add Scene. Every perspective view you create will be your vray camera itself and will be linked to the layers, shadows, styles and visible objects at the time of creation. You'll notice that in the upper part of the viewport, a tab will be added as Scene 1. This can be renamed later. Every time you need to add another camera, you can repeat the process I've described, or you can click with the right button on Scene 1 and add a new one. Every view will be a camera. To access the camera's properties, go to Asset Editor, Settings, Camera. When you use exposure value, EV, we'll be able to simplify the things in situations where we need to adjust the exposure, including close-up scenes, with depth of field. Moreover, it's better to use the advanced options by clicking on this icon. Here you can find all the options we normally would manage in the course, so as to have a better control of what our camera does. If we go down, we'll find sections as depth of field and effects to fix vertical aberration of the lines with vertical tilt. This option will fix the vertical lines manually. At the moment, there's no way to do this automatically like you can in 3ds Max. To do this, we can get help from the interactive renderer and play with the values until the vertical lines are correct. The higher the value we set, the more the vanishing line converge downwards. The lower the value, the vanishing lines will converge upwards. The key is to find the point to make our image look right, so the vertical lines are vertical. It's important to understand that the values we modify in Settings Camera will be the same for every scene we work in from now on, so it could be a little tricky to change it from one shot to another. For example, a close-up, an interior or an exterior. To avoid this, I recommend you save a new file for each scene you have, especially if you have different ISO, f-number, shutter speed, vertical tilt, etc. Rename the file according to what will be rendered. This version 3.4 of vray for SketchUp has a useful feature, Safe Frame. You'll find it in Asset Editor, Settings, Render Output. Its function, as in 3ds Max, is to determine the frame that will capture all you want to see in your render, dismissing the darker areas on the sides. In this toolbar, we'll find the icons to restore, load, or save settings created. Given that SketchUp doesn't have multiple viewports, you can play with Interactive Renderer and lock the camera to navigate the model without changing what you want to see in the frame buffer. As you can see, the management of the sunlight and camera in V-Ray for SketchUp is very friendly. It will be helpful to evaluate light and shadows that improve the general perception of the volumes in the scene. See you in the next lesson.